The Apache attack helicopter first flew in 1975. That's 50 years ago. It entered service in 1986. The same year Top Gun hit theaters and the Chernobyl disaster happened. And yet, in 2026, it's still the only dedicated attack helicopter the United States Army operates. Since then, the US has spent over $16 billion trying to build a replacement and has cancelled 4 separate programs without a single new helicopter making it into service. The Comanche, the Arapaho, the Armed Aerial Scout, and most recently, FARA. So what happened? Why can't the most powerful military on Earth build a new attack helicopter? Does the attack helicopter even have a future? This is Armored Geeks. Let's break it down. To understand why the US can't replace the Apache, you first need to understand what a remarkable machine it is. The AH-64 Apache was designed in the 1970s for one very specific purpose: killing Soviet tanks on the plains of Europe. If the Cold War ever went hot, waves of Soviet armor would pour through the Fulda Gap in Germany, and the Apache would be there to stop them, flying low, using terrain to hide, popping up to launch Hellfire missiles, then ducking back behind a ridgeline. It was built to be tough. Redundant systems everywhere. The crew sits in armored seats that can survive a crash at over 40 feet per second. It can take hits from 23mm rounds and keep flying. And its longbow radar, mounted on top of the rotor, lets it peek over hills and trees, find targets, and fire without ever fully exposing itself. The Apache proved itself spectacularly in the 1991 Gulf War. On the very first night, Apache helicopters destroyed Iraqi radar sites, blowing open a corridor for coalition aircraft to pour through. In the years since, it's seen action in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, and, through Allied forces, in Gaza and Lebanon. Boeing has continually upgraded it. The latest version, the AH-64E Guardian, has digital avionics, the ability to control drones in flight, improved engines, and composite rotor blades. Over 2,700 have been built, and 19 countries fly them. Boeing says it'll serve into the 2060s. But here's the problem. The Apache was never designed to do everything. It was a tank killer. The Army also needed something lighter, faster, and cheaper for scouting, for getting out ahead of friendly forces, finding the enemy, and reporting back. That was the job of the OH-58 Kiowa Warrior, a small helicopter based on a 1960s civilian design. And when the Kiowa started showing its age, the Army's decades-long nightmare began. In 1982, Ronald Reagan was in the White House. The Cold War was escalating, and the Army launched the Light Helicopter Experimental Program, or LHX. The idea was ambitious: build a single helicopter that could replace 4 different types: scout, attack, utility, observation. One bird to do it all. 6 years later, yes, 6 years just to write the requirements, the Army issued a formal request for proposals. The scope had been narrowed to a stealth reconnaissance and light attack helicopter. Boeing and Sikorsky teamed up and won the contract. What they designed was genuinely incredible. The RAH-66 Comanche was the world's first purpose-built stealth helicopter. It had a smooth, angular fuselage designed to minimize radar return, internal weapons bays so missiles wouldn't create radar signatures, an infrared suppression system to reduce its heat signature, fly-by-wire controls, a fantail rotor enclosed in the tail for quieter operation. It looked like something from a science fiction movie. The first prototype didn't fly until January 1996, 14 years after the program started. The second prototype joined it in 1999. Flight testing went well. The aircraft could exceed 200 knots, fly sideways at 60 knots, and fly backwards at 80 knots. But the problems were relentless. Every year brought budget cuts. Every budget cut forced the program to restructure. Every restructuring increased cost. The original plan called for 1,200 helicopters. That got cut to 800, then 650. As the quantity dropped, the per-unit price skyrocketed. The Government Accountability Office warned that the Comanche would consume nearly 2/3 of the Army's entire aviation budget. Then came September 11th. Suddenly, the Army was fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq, not against Soviet tank columns, but against insurgents with RPGs and IEDs. The Comanche's stealth was less relevant. Its reconnaissance mission could be handled by drones. The MQ-1 Predator was already proving itself over Afghanistan. On February 23, 2004, the Army pulled the plug. After 22 years and $6.9 billion, the Comanche program was dead. 0 helicopters delivered. The 2 prototypes now sit in a museum at Fort Novosel, Alabama. All the Army has to show for 2 decades of work. The Army promised the $14.6 billion earmarked for Comanche production would go toward upgrading existing helicopters and developing drones. Sound familiar? We'll come back to that. You'd think the Army would have learned its lesson. It didn't. Almost immediately after cancelling the Comanche, the Army launched the Armed Reconnaissance Helicopter program. This time, they said, they'd keep it simple. No stealth, no bleeding-edge technology, just a straightforward replacement for the Kiowa. Bell won the contract with the ARH-70 Arapaho, based on the proven Bell 407 civilian helicopter. Easy, right? Wrong. Costs ballooned. Schedules slipped. In October 2008, just 4 years after the Comanche cancellation, the Pentagon killed the Arapaho program too, citing cost overruns. The Army tried again in 2012 with the Armed Aerial Scout program. 5 different helicopters competed. The Army evaluated them all and concluded that none of them met its requirements. Budget sequestration cuts sealed the deal, and the AAS was terminated in 2013. By this point, the Army had spent billions across 3 programs and had absolutely nothing to show for it. The Kiowa was getting older and more dangerous to fly. In January 2017, the Army finally retired its last OH-58 Kiowa Warriors, leaving a gaping hole in its force structure that it filled by pressing Apaches and drones into the scout role. In 2018, the Army launched its most promising attempt yet, the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft, or FARA. This time, Army leadership was determined to do things differently. They streamlined the acquisition process. They set aggressive timelines. They limited the size and weight of the aircraft to keep costs in check. 14,000 pounds max, 40-foot rotor diameter, 180-knot speed requirement. 5 companies submitted designs. In March 2020, the Army picked 2 finalists to build flying prototypes. Bell proposed the 360 Invictus, a more conventional design with a sleek low-drag fuselage and a ducted tail rotor. Sikorsky, owned by Lockheed Martin, proposed the Raider X, based on their revolutionary X-2 compound helicopter technology with coaxial rotors and a pusher propeller, promising speeds over 250 knots. Both designs looked incredible. Both companies reported being over 90% complete on their prototypes by late 2023. The Army had invested $2.4 billion and was about to request another $5 billion over the next 5 years. Then, on February 8, 2024, the Army dropped a bombshell. FARA was cancelled. Not because of cost overruns, not because of technical failures. The prototypes were nearly ready to fly. The Army killed FARA because it decided it no longer needed the aircraft. Army Chief of Staff General Randy George cited lessons from Ukraine. We are learning from the battlefield, especially Ukraine, that aerial reconnaissance has fundamentally changed. Sensors and weapons mounted on a variety of unmanned systems and in space are more ubiquitous, further reaching, and more inexpensive than ever before. The money would be redirected toward drones, unmanned systems, and modernizing existing helicopters. Major General Claire Gill from Army Aviation later acknowledged the hard truth. The reconnaissance gap is still there. A manned pilot can feel the emotion of the battlefield, do multiple missions, provide fire support, casualty evacuation, things a drone can't easily replicate. But the Army decided that gap could be filled more cheaply with unmanned systems. This was the fourth major program cancellation. 4 programs, over 2 decades, more than $16 billion combined, and still, no new helicopter. So why can't the US military get this right? There are several overlapping reasons. The requirements trap. The military has a habit of asking for everything in one aircraft. The Comanche was supposed to replace 4 helicopters at once. Every time requirements get too ambitious, costs explode. But when the Army tries to simplify, as with the Arapaho, the industrial base still can't deliver on time or on budget. The budget death spiral. When Congress cuts funding, programs restructure. Restructuring delays timelines. Delays increase cost. Increased cost leads to more cuts. Fewer planned units means higher per unit cost. Higher per unit cost leads to more scrutiny, more cuts, and eventually cancellation. The Comanche went through 6 restructurings before it died. The moving target of warfare. The Comanche was designed to fight the Soviets. By the time it was ready, we were fighting insurgents. FARA was designed for great power competition. By the time it was nearly ready, Ukraine showed that cheap drones might dominate the battlefield. Each program gets overtaken by a shift in how we think about war. The drone revolution. This is the big one. Ukraine has fundamentally changed how militaries view aviation. Russia has lost over 100 attack helicopters, Ka-52s, Mi-28s, Mi-24s, many to shoulder-fired missiles and drone attacks. Small, cheap FPV drones costing a few $100s are destroying tanks and armored vehicles. The same mission attack helicopters were built for. If a $500 drone can do what a $20 million helicopter does, why build the helicopter? Industrial base fragility. The US has only a handful of companies capable of building military helicopters: Boeing, Bell, Sikorsky, and to a lesser extent, a few others. Repeated cancellations damage these companies' ability and willingness to invest in new designs. Engineers leave. Expertise atrophies. Each cancellation makes the next program harder. The Army's current plan is essentially upgrade what we have and invest heavily in drones. The AH-64E Apache Guardian remains in production and continues to receive upgrades. Boeing says it'll serve into the 2060s. The latest version 6 is being tested in a counter-drone role, and it's performing impressively, shooting down 13 out of 14 drones in recent live-fire tests. The Army is rewriting its training manuals to incorporate counter-UAS missions for Apache crews. The concept of manned-unmanned teaming is central to the Army's vision. Apache crews can already control MQ-1C Grey Eagle drones from the cockpit, using them as forward scouts and even launching Hellfire missiles through the drone. The idea is to let the manned helicopter stay farther back while drones do the dangerous scouting work, essentially achieving what the Comanche and FARA were supposed to do, but with expendable unmanned systems. Meanwhile, the Bell V280 Valor tiltrotor is still being developed under the FLRAA program to replace the Black Hawk. That's the Army's big bet on next-generation vertical lift, but it's an assault aircraft, not an attack helicopter. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has directed the Army to reduce and restructure manned attack helicopter formations and augment with inexpensive drone swarms. The writing is on the wall. The era of building a brand new manned attack helicopter from scratch may simply be over. There's something almost tragic about this story. 4 times in 40 years, the US Army tried to build the next great helicopter. 4 times, it failed, spending over $16 billion with nothing to show for it. But maybe the real lesson isn't about failure. Maybe it's that the battlefield itself kept telling the Army something it didn't want to hear. The age of the manned scout helicopter was ending before it could even build a replacement. The Apache will keep flying. Upgraded, adapted, paired with drones. It'll probably outlive every program that tried to replace it. But the dream of a clean sheet, purpose-built next-generation attack helicopter, that dream has been deferred, possibly forever. The question isn't whether the US can build a new attack helicopter, it's whether it should. What do you think? Should the Army have kept FARA alive, or is the future all drones? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe for more content on military vehicles. This was Armored Geeks. Catch you on the next one.